2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, welcome to this episode of the Adler.tv show, where there's a new episode and a new guest every Thursday. Quick note, I decided to go to a Metallica concert last night, and I had work at 5 o'clock this morning. So my neck hurts, my throat is thrashed, and my ears are still ringing, and my brain feels like a raisin. Remember last episode when I said I needed to make good choices? This is an example of what I was talking about. And speaking of concerts, this episode is all about sound. So I'm here at a place that puts on a concert for thousands of people every Sunday. That's right, I'm at a church. This is Church of the Highlands. They have 40,000 people or so all across the state of Alabama that check them out every single Sunday. And sound is a very important part of that. So I'm gonna be meeting with their engineer. Today's episode features a guy who has a similar upbringing to mine in the fact that he was surrounded by music pretty much his whole life growing up, but we were kind of surrounded by music in different ways. His dad owned a music store growing up, and my dad was a music minister in church. But when music is part of your daily life, you grow up a little bit different. You hear things a little bit differently. You think about music and sound and movies and microphones and speakers and riding in a car or watching a video on your computer. You think about it differently. And really, the main reason I've actually invited this guy to be on the show is I just want more dirty details about Prince. So welcome, Bert Trotman.
Hello, podcast world, and thank you, Mr. Adler, for having me on your show.
Bert's dad owns and operates Fretted Instruments in Birmingham, Alabama. And since 1972, Fretted Instruments has been one of, if not the best, guitar, ukulele, banjo, and amplifier stores in the country. And they're not paying me to say that. In fact, no one is paying me to say anything on this podcast. And if that ever changes, you will be the first to know. I mentioned Prince because this was, I forget how many years ago, obviously before the great one passed. I'm just like scrolling through social media on my phone, and I look and I see a post from you, and it's just like a cool looking room like this one. By the way, the room that we're in right now is the auditorium at Highlands Church, where Bert does sound, and among many, many other things. We're at the River Chase campus, one of a few campuses they have here in Birmingham and across the state of Alabama. This is a phenomenal room. Speaking of cool rooms,
yeah.
I'm scrolling through my social media and I see a picture of a cool room like this. Cool lights. You got a stage. You got speakers. You got all that stuff. And then I see that behind the stage, the big backdrop is Prince's symbol, the symbol of Prince. I'm just like, oh, that's weird. A Prince cover band, something like that. But no, you were at Prince's compound, right?
Paisley Park.
Paisley Park that's right. Okay, so you're at Paisley Park behind the soundboard, and I'm just like, okay, Bert's just running sound for Prince now. I guess that's what's going on. I'm sitting in my underwear on my couch. Don't feel too great about that, but that's fine. But dude, okay, so how did that happen? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, so I basically got a text from his manager at the time earlier that week saying, hey, we're doing a live Yahoo shoot at Paisley Park and need you to be on site, the audio guy on site. And this manager I'd worked before with like Lisa Marie Presley and CeeLo Green. But yeah, so he just hit me up and said, need you up here.
So to give people some background on you and all that kind of stuff, I'm the kind of person that just kind of like tinkered with cords and adapters and bubble gum and tape and paper clips, and that's how I have done sound my entire life. That's kind of how I've done it. You went to Full Sail, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, for people that don't know, that is one of the premier schools in the country for video production, sound production. Is it mostly sound?
They do sound, film, game design, show production.
It takes 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you in and out in 2 years? Mm-hmm. But it's like an insane schedule where you're not taking 15 to 18 class hours
right, yeah.
a week, kind of like in normal college. It's more of like a more than a full-time job kind of thing.
Exactly.
Which is cool, man. Like I even in film, I've not been professionally trained in any way to produce video content at all. I've just luckily there's so much on the internet. But when you and I were coming up, like you didn't have a million people on YouTube that do camera reviews and camera lens reviews as soon as the thing comes out. Like that's how I get a lot of my information. That's how I've educated myself, finding people that know what they're talking about and know what they're doing, and just keep in track with them and watch every video they have on YouTube. But none of that was around. Like I think YouTube was really just like the lightsaber kid with the broom or whatever. Like that's the only stuff that was on YouTube at the time. So it was a different world, and having that leg up, going through the official kind of coursework, and learning all the things that you really need to learn in order to be a professional, right out of the gate,
right.
That kind of thing. That I think was a great move, man. Like I'm still trying to figure out how to do this whole thing. So I could have been shooting the video for Prince that same day if I had just gotten my act together, I think a little bit, but it's a cool thing, man. So that technical training, obviously, and then once you get that kind of is like, all right, here's kind of the floor level. We showed you the ground floor. Now you need to take this information and then continue to evolve. Like all of this changes so quickly. If you stop paying attention and stop caring and stop working, whether you're in video production or sound or whatever, you're going to be behind pretty soon. Yeah. So that's a tough part of working in tech, but it's a cool thing too.
Yeah. Never stop learning.
Yeah, totally, man.
Continual process.
First, let's talk about the sound guys. Because there's a lot of times two worlds. There's monitor world, and then you've got what is called front of house. Yep. And monitor world, that's what the people in the band hear. That's what, when Taylor Swift is running across stage, she's not hearing what you're hearing coming out of the speakers, everybody. Bert's like, yeah, I know, man. I know Taylor Swift doesn't have the same mixer ears. So what they hear, a lot of times it may be even lyrical cues. It may be directions to go on stage. And then you've obviously got, the music, and you've got, it's a personalized mix for every single person. Even at the church that I do drums for now, every little person has a little box, and they can go piano, turn it up. Bass guitar, turn it down, or whatever the case may be. So that's amazing. Like people need to know that what you're hearing in the room is not necessarily what people are hearing in their ears. And a lot of times there's a click going. We'll talk about click later and stuff like that. But have you spent more time doing monitor world, or have you spent more time in front of house? And front of house is the guy that makes it sound like it sounds in the room. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. I would say it's probably about an equal combination. And that's one of the things where the Prince experience was really unique and like growing for me. I mean, so when I came in, Prince likes everything to be at one point. He wants one guy to do everything. He doesn't want a monitor mixer and everything like that. So he's got this analog board. It's nothing fancy. He wanted to be all analog, no digital. And so we did the live mix and the ear mix and the feed for the Yahoo live stream all from this one little analog mixer. So that was definitely a unique experience.
So you were kind of always ahead of the ball. You really were when it came to music production. We were doing a concert. This was like my junior year of high school. We're doing a concert, and I just rented a very, very terrible PA from a place here in town, and set up the speakers, and we were going to have 2 speakers for the vocals, and then everybody else is going to just play through their guitar amps, and then we'll just listen to the drums. It was as simple as you possibly could get. We might as well just have like the lead singer with a bullhorn, And then you rolled up, and you were like, "Hey, where do you guys want the monitors?" And I was like, "Whoa. Monitors?" You're like, "Yeah, monitors. It's the speaker that goes on stage that points at the people on the stage so they can actually hear what they're doing." And I'm like, "I know what monitors are. I've just never had monitors. So this is going to be the best concert I've ever done and ever been a part of." So talk about the difference, just like real quick primer on the difference between digital and analog. I know that can be, anything. Like there's the digital transition has occurred, and pretty much everything's digital now, unless you want to be cool and go for that analog sound and kind of go back in time.
Yeah.
It's like recording, or it's like listening to a record in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But like if you have a digital board versus an analog board, how is that different?
Yeah. So the digital age started, obviously when like CDs came out. Everything before that with cassettes and vinyl, that was all analog. The analog boards usually sound better. They're just not, it's kind of like listen to a vinyl, a lot of people think it sounds better. It's more warm and like smooth sounding, whereas sometimes the digital can be a little edgy and bitey. But they've really come a long way in the past, 10 years and are sounding a lot better.
And with digital, you're turning sound into ones and zeros.
Exactly.
And with analog, that's not occurring.
Mm-hmm.
You're running through metal. You're running through copper mostly.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And different people will take that to different extremes, meaning you started saying some words like edgy and bitey and stuff like that. There's a whole plethora of words that are used in this industry to describe what a lot of people can't even hear the difference of. Mm-hmm. A sound guy is going to hear sound coming at him like a prism splits apart light, I would say. Like you're listening to all elements of it. So like everybody has seen the picture where white light hits a prism, a little reflective piece of mirror glass or whatever, and out of that prism, the light has been broken into its pieces. You got red, green, blue, all those different colors, and it was all in that white light, and we couldn't see it until the prism broke it up. But a sound man is going to be listening to whatever he's listening to in that way, breaking it apart, piecing it together. And I think the prism analogy works well, because you are taking what we view as one wave coming at us and really piecing it together. Mm-hmm. Like you've got the bass way down below, and then you've got, like you said, edgy and bitey. That's more like, would tinny be a word that means kind of the same? Mm-hmm. So tinny is kind of when songs, and in fact, I'm going to do something right now in post, meaning later. This is what it sounds like when something is way too tinny. See, before my voice was kind of full and nice and had some low boom to it, but now it's just, I've taken all the low end out, and now it's just tinny, and I sound like an even tinier man than I am.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, don't you?
Yeah.
All right, now I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to take out all the highs. You got highs and lows, and so we're going to take out all the highs, and now it's just me talking in this weird, you no longer hear the consonants. You no longer hear the Peter Piper picked a tickling Tommy. You don't hear any of my, I shouldn't have said tickling Tommy. That's a very strange thing to say. But you can't hear all those consonants, and those are very important for understanding language. And without those in it, it's a big problem. We're getting kind of complicated when talking about the mix and stuff like that. So let's talk about just the different kinds of speakers.
So you've got subwoofer. That's going to give you all your lows. The things that are going to rattle your car, and usually you can feel that kind of in your chest and your stomach when you're at a concert. Then there's mid-range and high-range speakers. You've also got, if you've gone to a concert and you've seen the line arrays that are hung, those kind of all couple together and make a really good long throw speaker. Whereas like the point source, which are going to be more like horizontally displayed, may not shoot as far, but they cover more area.
So the line array, are those also called like a J cluster or something like that? Or, by the way, in previous episodes, I've just butchered a lot of words that have to do with jujitsu, and then I've butchered a ton of words that have to do with cooking. Now I'm going to butcher a lot of terms that have to do with audio and sound, but hopefully we can learn a little bit in the process. Sure. But I don't know, J cluster or something like that, but it's kind of shaped like a J, I guess. I don't know, but people don't say that.
Not typically.
You can be honest. You can just say no. It's okay.
No one's ever said that before.
So it looks like a J, but it's kind of this big wavy thing. We've all seen them, and we've all kind of like looked up and said, "Oh man, I hope somebody rigged that up correctly because I'm right below it."
Yeah.
In fact, we've seen a few that I'm reminded of. I think it was Little Big Town or one of those kind of acts that had that country. The state fair, the whole stage went to the ground. I mean, you probably saw that. As a sound guy, you're probably looking at it, picking it apart, and saying, "All right, who messed up here?"
That's scary.
It's unbelievably scary. You got trucks and trucks of equipment up in the air, and with those gale force winds, man, like those backdrops. A lot of times with the big vinyl backdrops, they catch some wind and down it goes, man. Like as a concert goer and a concert photographer, I'm a lot of times right in that front little pit area. So I watched that video probably 10 or 12 times just to see what happened, what kind of time people had to get out of the way, and just, man, it was horrific. And everybody that's involved is just eaten up just because of what happened. Because it's concerts, it's so crazy. Like concerts are fun zone. I don't care about anything. That's a place for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Concerts are a place where people can go and have fun, not worry about anything for most people. Whereas you're thinking about all that stuff. You're thinking about the sound. You're thinking about the safety. You're thinking about protecting your equipment and protecting yourself and representing your artist well and all kinds of stuff. So it's a crazy thing to work in a fun zone like that, and you have to be so deadly serious. And if everybody has a great time, then you did it right. You know, a lot on you, man.
Exactly.
So when you hear that boom, boom, boom at a concert, a lot of times that's coming from the speakers are kind of down on the floor. And low sounds, bass sounds, do they kind of emanate or kind of disperse in almost a circular pattern?
That would be omnidirectional.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. And then higher sounds, you can point a speaker that's making a higher kind of those kind of sounds, and that's going to be much more directional in that you can laser beam focus that. And I guess that's just because you got sound waves that look like this, and then you got sound waves that look like that. Yeah. People can't see my hand on the podcast. Sorry, audio only people. So you've got those different scenarios. I've been in a pit before, and I think the loudest pit I've ever been in, it literally, I think it changed the rhythm of my heart.
Yes.
I'm standing next to this box that's as big as an SUV, and that's just one of 8 that they have in the front. And it was, what's his name? Diplo, the DJ, and then Skrillex, the DJ, when they were doing this joint venture. I forgot what it was called, but they were both the hottest DJs of the time. So it was both of these guys playing music. This is awesome. This is crazy. Kids were going nuts, but it was unbelievable, the level of bass. And I was like, I got to get out of this pit right now because I don't think this is good for my health. This is hurting me on the inside. I got to get out of here, man. But that was definitely probably the loudest sub experience I've had. But it can get real loud real easily, and especially if somebody that's kind of not quite as good or they don't quite know exactly what they should be doing behind the booth. So the lows tend to get me, but I'm down in the pit. The highs can be just as piercing too, man.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that. Around 30 minutes of exposure to sound over 90 decibels, which that's typically quieter than a concert, can start to damage your ears. Most concerts are 100, 110 dB, and it can definitely cause some damage if you're not careful.
Yeah, I've definitely done some damage, man. I've got tinnitus, like crazy, which is just ringing in your ears for people that haven't checked into it. But man, if I sit in a quiet room and focus on it, it's considerably loud. It is there. And that's just what is it? Scarring on one of the bones?
Well, it's your the hairs, the microscopic hairs that are in your ears have been damaged.
Oh, okay,
It's irreparable.
Oh, that's good.
I'm just
great,
some really
fantastic.
What?
It's very repairable. Great, good. Dude, I've done so many stupid things with my ears. In college, a few buddies of mine, we were in a metal band together, and we rented a storage unit. So it was like an 8x10 metal box, and I had my drums in there, and we had several amps in there, and like a small PA so the guy could scream.
Nice.
And it was really loud in there. Like I would just go and practice for hours at a time with nothing on, just drums, practice drums with nothing on, and I can still hear the tin corrugated walls echoing in my brain. So that was a mistake. That was stupid. A buddy of ours had a Marshall half stack just in his room. It's a mutual friend of ours. He had a Marshall half stack just in his room. This speaker is like probably 4 or 5 feet tall, and it's loud enough to by itself play Oak Mountain Amphitheater. Like you could rock this room, no problem. Like no problem. And this is probably half a football field size, maybe a little bit smaller. But sure. So, and we played in that small room, played that. I mean, I've time and time again made poor choices when it comes to my hearing. And I just hope that by the time it's like gone, maybe when I'm in my 50s or 60s or whatever, hopefully science will have come along to do something for me, man. Otherwise, I'm just going to be wearing one of those big old plastic things. Maybe they'll look at least cool. Like Beats will be making hearing aids by then or something. I'd be like, yo, check out my new Beats hearing aids. How does a speaker make sound? Like, what is that?
Yeah, you can make a speaker out of anything. I mean, if you, there's people like, you can look up videos on YouTube of people just making a speaker out of paper. If you put enough coils around it and make it vibrate, that's really all that sound is air pressure moving. So vibrations in the air. If you can get anything to vibrate at a certain frequency, then it's going to make a sound and become a speaker. But there's obviously things you can do to make it more efficient, which is where you get the cones and the big magnets and things like that.
Yeah, with subs, a lot of times it looks almost like a shallow bowl, kind of, at least in the older ones that I'm used to. Yeah. But now they're making them crazy, all kinds of crazy shapes. And but essentially it is just it's just a diaphragm that's moving back and forth, kind of moving the air, and moving at a certain frequency, and that's what makes the sound. Yeah. Okay.
And that's what moves the bones in our ears and our eardrum, and that's what the little hairs in your ears pick up as vibrations, and that transmits to your brain as sounds.
And eventually, like, turns into, hey, little baby, and you eventually figure it out, That's all we're doing, guys. That's all we're doing. We're just making random sounds into meaning. Whoa. You're going to look at what people can hear. Like there's a range. There's the range that human beings can hear as far as pitch, low, pitch to high, right?
Frequencies.
Yeah, the frequencies that people can hear. So if you go low to high, what's that range generally speaking?
Yeah, so it'd be 20 hertz is the lowest that people can hear, and then up to 20,000 is the highest. Which I've heard some like proprietary subs that actually go lower than 20 hertz, and you can feel them.
But you just can't hear them.
Yeah.
So even though you can't hear them, is that sound still potentially damaging the hairs in your ears?
Well, it could be damaging other things because our brain waves operate in the lower range, like 3 to 8 hertz or something like that. So it could be possibly affecting your brain waves and affecting some bodily functions
the brown note. Do you know about the brown note?
Do I know about it?
So let's talk about the brown note. There's like a rumored frequency or whatever that you can hit that will kind of make you have to poop, scientifically speaking. I think didn't like Mythbusters do an episode about that or something like that? Is that something
Possibly.
that audio engineers like, man, if this pastor goes any longer, I'm going to have to hit a brown note in here. That doesn't happen. Nobody does that, by the way. I just made that up. I'm the weird person that would only the weird person that would think of that.
I'm gonna use that this Sunday. That's great.
Most people have a very high quality mic and speaker with them all the time. Their phone. It's a highly capable computer that you have in your pocket, so treat it like a tool you can use, not just a distraction or escape or mini TV. So if you want to start a podcast or YouTube channel or photography or videography or write a book or draw or make music or whatever, I just want to remind you that you have a very capable computer in your pocket. Let's talk about iPhones. The speaker in this thing, every year it gets better and better and better, and I'm amazed by it. Is it your stereotypical speaker setup? Do you know about the speakers in phones?
Yeah. It's usually a mono setup, so it's not a stereo. Although the newer iPhones, I think they are stereo.
That's right.
But it's usually like a piezoelectric transducer, and it saves on the space and everything. But yeah, I'm always amazed at the sound quality they get out of those things. I'm
cranking it up in my house yesterday, and it's not like, it's not like boomy, because they can do the high sounds much easier than the low sounds, and it's just getting better and better and better. And the camera as well. The camera, I got to thank Apple, honestly, for continuing to push the envelope, push the limits, push whatever, the standard for this little camera right here and this little microphone and this little speaker, because that makes everybody get better. That makes everybody push, because if you buy a camera, like a real deal point and shoot camera, and it doesn't shoot as good as this, you're going to be like, what the heck do I need a camera for? We've talked about different kinds of speakers. There are also different kinds of microphones. Like some microphones are good for recording human voices, and some are good for recording violins and then that kind of stuff. So how does the sound of a person's voice, how does that get recorded in the best possible way?
Yeah. So what's crazy is like the microphones that we're using right here are a dynamic type microphone, which means they don't require any type of power. So there's actually just a little a diaphragm in there that's moving when you speak, and that transmits electricity down through the cable into the preamp, and you record your sound that way. You've also got the condenser microphones that take phantom power, and those are usually a little bit higher end, more expensive, better sounding, depending on what you're using it for.
And most of those are going to be large diaphragm, like a bigger hearing eardrum, basically. Like this little microphone has like a little eardrum in it.
Typically, like if you'll see somebody singing in the studio on a music video, they've got their big microphone. It's probably big because it has tubes in it. So it's like warming up their voice a lot, and it looks really cool. And you got to have a cool looking mic for your music video.
You got to. When I can afford one, I'll get better mics for this show. Yeah, these are just like my SM57s, whatever they are. Like this is your standard. If you're going to buy a microphone and play in bars and throw it around, and you're going to record voices with it and maybe record some guitar with it and maybe record whatever, do you have $100 that you want to spend on a microphone? That'll work. That'll do the job. Right now, I've got like what looks like pantyhose that we're talking through. It's like a ring that has like a pantyhose stretched across it almost. And then in addition to that, I've got a little blue foam thing on here. And the reason I did that is because when you talk, you actually put out a whole lot of air, and you don't realize it. I especially do. I don't know what my deal is, but what I'm talking about is put your hand close to your face, people that are listening. You're going to feel a lot of air, and that's what, when you talk straight into your phone, when you're talking straight into your phone and it sounds really bad, that's because the wind from your mouth is just blowing over that microphone, keeping it from being able to record good audio. And that's why you see like on these movie sets and a lot of times with higher quality newscasts, when somebody's holding a microphone in somebody's face, it looks like it's covered in fur and stuff like that. That's just for wind. That's not because audio engineers think it looks cool to have like a fuzzy thing in their hands. They're doing that to get wind out of there, but allow sound in. But audio quality is just huge, man. As a person that watches tons of YouTube videos, most of the time I can tell that someone isn't quite as good at making videos by the quality of their audio. Like a lot of people, they can nail the visuals, you know, or even just by stock footage for whatever video they're making. But once their audio kicks in and it's like, hello, welcome to my video, it just like sounds really bad. You're like, okay, this person doesn't know what they're doing. So people, if you're looking for, because I spent a lot of time trying to get better at video production. So if you're looking for tips in that area, if it doesn't look great and it doesn't sound great, both of those things are so important. Go to the next video, watch 10 seconds of it. If it doesn't look great, if it doesn't sound great, find someone else to talk about whatever subject you're looking for, because that person doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah,
that's
like the Chris Adler show.
Like the Chris Adler show.
Yeah.
Dude, the audio on my first podcast is such garbage. That's why I'm meeting with you right now. I've got audio, like my voiceovers came from like camera mics and then like a good mic and then my phone and just like all kinds of different places, because I was just like, oh my gosh, I forgot to do that. I'm just at home right now. So here I am. I'm learning how to do jujitsu. This is cool. This sounds the same, I promise. No, different stuff sounds different, and it's so important if you really want a true polished product to get the best out of your microphone, using a great microphone, you know. And it's easy to screw up. Even if you have a great microphone, you can screw up by not blocking the wind, you know. And like even nice big large diaphragm microphones, you can screw it up. So just like any camera, if you don't know what you're doing with the camera, it's gonna be crappy too.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a crappy product.
And along those lines, if you can't afford you a nice little pop filter, which they're cheap, but if you don't have that available, you can always try a high pass filter. And high pass filters are my personal best friend. I love them. I use them all the time.
Nice.
And what they do basically is cut the low frequencies, and you can select, maybe at 100 hertz, 120, and it just cuts all the lows out. So you can kind of remove some of those loud little pops in there and stuff.
One of the major things that has helped me improve my audio was learning how to take a noise print. And that's used a good bit in movies, where they'll just sit in a room and just record the room, because whether we're thinking about it or not, this room is making sound. Yeah. There's electronic equipment in here. There is air conditioners going. Air conditioners will kill you on sound, and you won't even know it till you sit down and it's just like throughout your whole video. You're like, oh, this sounds like garbage. Air conditioners will absolutely kill you. In fact, on most TV shows that you're watching, they kill the air conditioner. Like we're about to start. All right, kill the AC. They do that every take. And so rooms make noise. Every room, because of its different height and shape and stuff in it and stuff that's going on in it, they're gonna in order to do a noise print, to get the noise of the room, they'll sit and just hold a microphone in the room for like a minute, just in silence. What we would call silence, and what they're going to do is take the noise of the room and then use that and cut that out of what they just recorded that has all the audio and the talking and things like that, so that hopefully you take the noise of the room out and then you're left with just the pure acoustics of the person's voice and lips and vocal cords and mouth and all that kind of stuff. And their heart, or their chest, almost like your chest is an echo chamber, or whatever you want to call it, like whether you know it or not. And speaking of echo chambers, that's why we all sound different, because what we're hearing is the echo of our voice within our brain and skull, versus what other people hear all the time is not that. It's what's out in the room. So whatever you sound like, that's why you sound so weird on a voicemail, and that's why we all sound weird on recording voices, because it's just different. You're just listening to it from a different place. It's like looking at a painting from 100 feet away or staring right at it. If you're staring right at it, it's going to look a lot different. So,
and that made me think about just thinking about room noise. Is that there's this thing called an anechoic chamber, which is basically a completely dead and silent room. They do acoustical testing and stuff in there, and there's no noise. And they say that like the longest that you can stay in there is about 15 minutes before you literally go crazy. You can hear your blood flowing, your heart beating. And I still haven't been in one, but it's be pretty interesting.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird how like sensory we get used to all the noise, you know. We get used to it all. We tune it out. And that's why you see, you know, a lot of times that are people that are in like the autism spectrum, they have such a hard time because like to us, the air conditioner that's going on right now isn't loud. It's not bothering me, but there are a lot of people whose just brains just don't work in the way that ours do. And when it comes to filtering that stuff out, and they're just like, how could you, if there was a dog barking, you know, right here during our conversation, you'd have a really hard time talking to me. Yeah. Have you heard of those sensory deprivation tanks, by the way?
Yeah.
Have you ever done that or anything like that? Yeah, I haven't either, man. I've heard they're great for just, you know, relaxing you and letting your brain do some thinking or whatever. Yeah. And you mentioned brain waves and how, you know, subwoofers could potentially negatively impact us. The positive effects of music are 100% tangible. Not only just music can convey an emotion and it can convey feeling in a way that nothing else can. Just like a string section can play two notes and you're like, I feel that. You know what I'm saying? That, and even if you don't know anything about music, you're still going to get a feeling from it. You might not know why. You might not know because they went from a major to a minor, and that made me feel kind of spooky or emotional or whatever. You might not know why, but it's still gonna get you. You know. And I'm not saying I'm like overwhelmed and overcome with emotion because of it. I still feel it, and I couldn't do anything about it. Yeah. Music is crazy. But the positive effects on my brain that classical music has is tangible, and I can feel it, and it is like a chemical release. Like if I go maybe, you know, 3 or 4 days without listening to music, because sometimes I do, like I get busy, I'm working, I'm listening to my own garbage, I'm editing stuff at work, or and then I get in the car and I'm listening to news or whatever, sports, whatever. I haven't gotten my music time, and 3 or 4 days will go by. And sometimes it'll be longer, and I'm like, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel weird and bad and like antsy, and like my brain just isn't firing the way that it should? And I'll sit down and I'll put on some classical music, and that's it. I'm not, you know, watching TV. I'm not doing anything else. I just run that through my brain, and it's like I go from woo 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 woo, and it's back to it, and it's like the engine was cranking too high, and running that music through it brought it back down. It's just real, man. It's just a real thing. It's like every once in a while I get to the point where I'm like, man, I gotta go sit in a quiet room with some headphones on and listen to, honestly, it might even be a minute and a half. It might be 90 seconds of classical music, but I can pop that in my ears and literally feel different and feel better. And like, if you're not exposing yourself to instrumental music, I feel like that's a big part of it too. You really should. If you're having a hard time, you're stressed out, you don't feel great, put on some classical music and just close your eyes and think, or try not to think, and you'll feel a lot better afterwards.
Yeah.
Let's talk about BPM and what that means, and then we can talk about click a little bit too.
Sure.
So BPM is beats per minute. And what's kind of the range that people generally speak in terms of BPM?
You'd probably say like 60 to, 130-ish, something like that.
And that is literally, if you don't know how music works, most of the time, most music you can break down into groups of 4. So like a lot of times I'll use the song We Will Rock You by Queen. Do, do, clack. Do, do, clack. We will. So think about that. Do, clack. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So most of the time you can do that. So like a verse, a lot of times you count to 4, 8 times. That's the end of the verse, and now we're going into the chorus, and it follows this framework. You got dance music is going to be at like 127 BPM. So much dance music is at 127. It's the weirdest thing ever. But like, so wake me up when it's all over. So that's your beat right there. That's your BPM, and that's going to be a high BPM for dance music. It's going to be a slower BPM for like Etta James. At last, 2, 3, na, 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 2. So that's your beat. That's your BPM, folks. And if you're the person that's clapping when no one else is clapping, do some more research about BPM and things like that, so that you're not clapping on the 1 and the 3 instead of the 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have to count, it's okay. Do you remember that Dave Chappelle bit where he had that thing that could read people's minds, and so he goes out on the dance floor and like there's a bunch of people and they're cool and they're dancing, and then they get to the white guy, and on the dance floor he's going and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. The white guy is. It's so good. Generally speaking, it's good to, unless you're doing it on purpose, generally speaking, it's good to not radically change that BPM throughout a song when you're performing it live for an audience, because unless you're doing it on purpose, which I know, how do you feel about the saying, click has no soul?
I believe that has a little bit of truth to it, but it's mainly being like dead on the click where it has no soul. But as long as you're got a little groove built in there, and I think it was it James Brown? It says, whatever you do, just land on the 1.
That's right. That's right. So fill out everything else, do what you want on, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
But once it comes back to 1, 2, what are we doing? Bam, back on the 1. Yeah, that's great stuff, man. Yeah. I mean, click is in every church that has any kind of level of production. Mm-hmm. Do you see that? I see that continuing for as long as, because it kind of just sharpens everybody up.
Mm-hmm. There's a few people who, you can tell that they've like locked into the click and they can be on the beat and, really solid. There's a couple people who may have not played as much, practiced as much, and they may be a little bit off the click, a little bit behind the beat, and it feels like the whole song is dragging if the drummer is like playing behind the beat. Definitely helps to have someone that's just like in that solid groove. They may not too fast, not too slow, but just kind of right in the pocket,
Yeah, a lot of times I view pocket as like you're in the back pocket. So like we're all, wearing the same pair of pants, but the drummer's on the back pocket, meaning like, and this is probably not what it really means when you say pocket, but like you're kind of like right behind the beat, like you're on the beat, but you're just right on the tail end of it. If the beat was like the width of my finger, you've got the front of the beat, you got the very middle of the beat, and but you're still on the beat. You got the end of the beat. I feel like when you're pocket drumming, you're hitting the very last possible moment in time you can, but still be on the beat, and it keeps people from rushing, and it keeps people from going too fast and getting out of control, and it just kind of is that nice tail end reminder to every beat, like this is how fast this should be. Mm-hmm. So let's kind of hang out here.
Yeah, and you can't really get that from like a synthesizer or computer that's just right on the beat every time. It's got to be more of like a human kind of feel groove.
Drum machines. That might be the saying that I'm mixing up a little bit. It's not click has no soul. It's drum machines have no soul. But that we can definitely agree on. Drum machines have no soul. Yeah. But there have been a lot of good songs recorded with drum machines.
People have made a lot of money.
People made a lot of money. That is for sure. Music is such a trendy business, man. Like one person gets some success with whatever, and then the next thing you know, for the next year, like listen to the sound of the bass in Iggy Azalea's I'm So Fancy or whatever, that sound for the next year, every song like had some of that in it, and now
how about T-Pain with
the auto-tune? There you go. That took over for like 6 years. Yeah. The copycat syndrome is like you working for sound in a church, you're like in one of the few places that can be authentic. And I know that churches have to do things that people want. Churches have to get people here. That's part of it. Like obviously the goal is ministering to them and showing them the love of Jesus Christ. Yeah. Obviously that's the goal, but that's not going to happen unless you get them here. And if they hate what you do here, they're not going to come. Yeah. And if free coffee brings some people to the Lord, cool, great. Jesus gave away a lot of free stuff to get people to listen to his sermons.
Fish sticks.
There you go. Fish and bread, and come on. But yeah, man, I had to get out of, and I know this is not really the music industry, but I was DJing weddings for a long time, about maybe 4 years. And I just got to the point where I was like, I don't even like music anymore. I'm having to buy all this terrible music. I probably spent $2,000 on songs because I had to buy them and have an actual copy of it in order to get it into my DJ mixing software. I had to have the file itself, that kind of thing. And I've got so much garbage, man, on my laptop. And part of that was like people would request songs and I'd be like, that's kind of a PG-13 song and I want to go PG at this wedding, that kind of thing. And keeping up was annoying. I'd get in my car and I'd be like, I guess I better turn on, the rap station.
There's definitely some clutch songs at every wedding they always request. It's usually like some dance numbers, wobble, stuff like that.
Dude, though I feel very uncomfortable. Have you listened to the words of the wobble? I mean, it's like I'd be doing like a kids party and they'd be like, "Hey, will you play the wobble?" I'm like, the chorus is "Get in there, yeah." It's like the groans and the grunts just make me unbelievably uncomfortable. I played the wobble like a million times, obviously, and then I just got to the point where I was just like, What about like something else? What about Cupid Shuffle? Here we go.
Yeah.
Let's do Shout instead.
And then like, I think something like Good Girls at a wedding, like.
Which one? Which one is that?
Make the good girls.
Oh, yeah.
I know you want it.
Right.
Yeah.
What rhymes with hug me? Come on. There are kids here. What are we doing, people? Yeah, so I would always go like old school, like Shout, The DJ thing was so tough because I got sick of having to be the person that brought the party. When you're the videographer, you kind of just document the party.
Right. Yeah.
And if the party is crappy, then it's kind of not your, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
You kind of felt like it was your fault. And I'm like, y'all, I played these same songs at a wedding last weekend and it was lit. And you guys, I think y'all are just boring people. I'm sorry, maybe not. But yeah, I got to the point where I was like, man, why did I start this business? This is not what I want to do with my life. I literally have sunk 10 grand and countless hours into this. What am I doing? Real quick, when it comes to starting a career or business, when I started DJing weddings, my plan was actually just to buy $5,000 worth of DJ equipment so that I could make extra money DJing to buy my first professional camera. What actually ended up happening is the DJ business delayed me even more in reaching that goal of having a good professional camera. Now, I did make some quick, easy money. I could easily make over $1,000 in one day, which is really good for me, especially considering my SAT math scores. And I went on some incredible trips. I paid bills. I bought a motorcycle with that DJ money, but the money I was making wasn't worth the time it was taking. And I'm not saying my time is valuable, I'm saying time is valuable. Money spends and it's gone. And if I really need more money, I can make more money. But if I waste time, it's gone forever. So there's a cautionary tale for you about personal and career goals and time and money. Okay, back to the podcast. Let's say you've got a guy on guitar who sings, and you got a guy playing bass, and you got a drummer. So you got a three-piece, real simple. What would be a good example of that? A good band example of that. Maybe Gary Clark Jr. He probably has way more people backing him up, but all right, let's make it a four-piece. So you got Gary Clark Jr., he's on guitar, and he's singing. Ripping, he's going to destroy it. And then you've got a guy on bass guitar.
Victor Wooten.
You got Victor Wooten on bass guitar, okay. And then on keys, you do have an organist or a keyboardist, and you've got the best keyboardist ever, Yanni. We can all agree. You've got Yanni. And then on drums, you've got Neil Peart or
Carter Beauford
or me, either me
Chris
or Neil
Adler.
Peart,
Right, yeah.
or Carter Beauford, dude. Yeah, Carter Beauford. He was one of the guys that really made me say, all right, he's doing something different here.
Right.
I need to learn what this guy's doing. What are you going to do? How are you going to make that sound good in, let's go a room like this, like a room that's about as big as a high school gymnasium. Yeah. What are you going to do?
So the first thing I think about is the volume, and a lot of times, like, especially the room, depending on the room, louder is not always better. And that's kind of one of the big marks to me of a good engineer, is like having a really good mix, but at a level that's not gonna like melt your face off, or like give you a heart attack.
Ears.
Yeah, hurt your ears. Exactly. And I think a lot of people try to compensate and just pump up the volume as loud as it'll go. But so the sweet spot in a room like this is really around like, 90 to 95 kind of tops.
And you're not just guessing. You have whatever that's called, volume.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it a voluminator. That's not right. That's incorrect.
The technical term is a SPL meter, sound pressure level meter.
Okay.
And then if you to look at a spectrum analyzer, or a RTA, real-time analyzer, you can, sometimes your ears plays tricks on you. So it's kind of just a good reference to look at and see, hey, am I doing everything right? Are my ears fatigued? Are they tired or anything like that? And you can look at the frequency bands and see if an area is peaking up a lot louder than some of the other areas, you might say, oh, I need to cut that, or I might need to boost this a little bit. So like your lows are going to be higher, and then your mids are going to be more, kind of in the middle. And then your highs are going to be a little lower than that.
Because they just cut through.
Yeah.
And people hear them.
Yeah, and it would pierce your ears.
Okay.
Yeah, really bad.
Yeah, I've been in a few shows before here and there where it's just like, it's just cutting through, and I'm just like, what are they doing? I'm looking for like cocktail napkins and stuff in my ears. Right. In fact, I went to a metal show at the Masquerade one time in Atlanta, and the final act, because metal shows are a weird thing. They like purposefully give the opening bands crappy mixes so that as the night goes, it feels like it builds, and like even if the beginning bands are maybe a little bit better, the night feels like it's built. It's bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as we go. And that was the loudest highs I've ever heard in my life.
In the opener?
No, for the final act.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they kept boosting the volume, man. And I got to say, it was probably 130 or something, 140 decibels in that room. I was like, but definitely the loudest I've ever heard it. Yeah. And I had to go get some cocktail napkins and stuff them in my ears just so I could hang out. Yeah. But I made the mistake of making the first little ball too small. See, I put that in my ear, and I was like, oh gosh, that went really deep. And after the show, I'm like asking my wife, I'm like, can you get this out for me, please? It hurts so bad. She's like, use a key, use anything. She's digging out of my ear, and she's like, I think I got it. I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine. A year goes by. I'm at the doctor. I'm sick. I've been getting like sinus infections, all kinds of problems for like a year, like even more so. I broke my nose, so like I get sinus infections all the time as it is, but like things were bad. I was like, what's going on? The doctor looks in my ear and he's like, what in the world? And he starts pulling stuff out, dude. And he's like, what is in your ear? I'm like, I don't know. And then I remembered a year ago, I put a napkin in my ear. I had paper in my ear for a year.
Oh, wow.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
You're my first friend to have on this show. Yeah. And you know a ton about sound, and I knew I'd have a great time with you, and sound is so important in so many ways for so many things. That's why I asked you to be on it, man. So I really appreciate you doing it.
Thank you.
So this has been fun for me. Sorry I've talked so much. I've just been like, oh yeah, this is what I know. Listen to me talk about sound, Bert. Gosh, terrible. I am the worst interviewer ever. Every single time I sit down and start chopping up my stuff, and I'm just like, dude, you talked the whole time. You were supposed to interview them. So apologies to you, Bert, and apologies to everyone. I'll get better, I hope. I hope I'll get better. We'll see. What is feedback?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Chris. I'm glad you asked. That would be anytime you hear, somebody talking to a mic, or, you hear someone talking to a bullhorn pretty much, and it's like, mm-hmm. Yep.
And what is causing that?
Basically a feedback loop. So the audio that's going out of the speaker is coming back into the speaker and creating a feedback loop, and it's just building on those frequencies.
So when you are talking on stage and it starts to do that, and you point it away from yourself and you point it down at the monitor people, you're just making it worse. That's what you're doing. Yeah, you're feeding a speaker into a microphone.
Yes.
So there you go.
Yeah. And another thing I can say, if any bands are watching and you are on stage and at a festival and you're talking to your monitor guy, well, that's the first mistake. Don't talk to your monitor guy. Give hand signals. If you're playing, you need something, you know, it's pretty easy to point at your mouth and go up or down. It's easy to make a guitar strum and go up or down.
Yep.
But, you know, we can't read your lips when you're talking and it's loud, you know?
Yeah, man.
Just a little side note there.
That's so true, dude. That's so funny.
But yeah, so, and then definitely to help with feedback, I usually do high pass filters starting around 132, you know, maybe a little higher for a female voice. And then just go from there, you know. If you have more than one mic, you might start cutting the higher frequencies and just make some space in your mix for the vocals to come through. So you can't have every instrument sounding at it 100% of its potential. You know, you may have to cut around 2K on the guitars or the drums to let the vocals really shine through. It's just kind of carving space for the vocals to come through.
And same for like your kick drum, that has to have its own space and its own characteristic and its own volume and its own space. And the snare, that's got to cut through and have its own space. And really, I guess as one of the final note here is, I would say, start practicing, start going to shows, or even just listening to music with your headphones on, and start trying to listen to just the whatever. While you're listening to the song, while you're at a show, try to listen to just the bassist and just the bass guitar, you know? And if you can pick that out and it sounds good, move on to the next thing and train your ear, because you can get good at this. Like, and it's a big deal. Like, what audio sounds like, whatever you choose to do and whatever you choose to do, choose to listen to good music, choose to listen to well-produced music. And Bert, I appreciate you showing us and telling us a small part of how that is a possibility.
Thank you. I've been very blessed with a lot of opportunities. But like, this is probably one of the better ones. You know, it's definitely satisfying and fulfilling to help, you know, change lives. So it's an honor.
That's awesome, man. And just for old time's sake, I've actually worn the Sound Guys uniform for this podcast, and that is all black. Look, check it out. I'm a sound guy.
That is.
I'm a roadie. So. I'm a roadie. Black jeans, black shirt, black shoes. Who's hiring? Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Adler.tv show. This week's featured organization is the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind. They provide comprehensive education and service programs to children and adults who are deaf, blind, and multi-disabled. The Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind works to transform the lives of people beyond expectations by refusing to let adversity limit any individual's potential. So for more info, you can go to aidb.org. That's aidb.org. Next week on the show, the guest will be Tim Digman. He's a Green Beret, and he's now one of the owners of 2 rock climbing gyms here in Birmingham, First Avenue Rocks and Birmingham Boulders. Tim also builds custom electric skateboards that can go over 30 miles per hour and have a range of 30 miles. I repeat, my next guest builds electric motor-propelled skateboards that can carry a human over 30 miles per hour for 30 miles without stopping. I'm excited. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and please subscribe and please do comment. I love the feedback and seeing what you guys liked and what you didn't like. If you find value in this podcast, please do tell your friends about it. New episodes go live every Thursday, and for links and everything you might need, go to Adler.tv. See you next week. What made you choose music?
Yeah, well, it was that or drug dealing, pretty much.
Well, I'm glad you chose Full Sail.
Yeah.